What's going on, guys? SeeJay here. In today's video, I wanted to continue my series of tank, healer, support, and attacker specific tagged characters in Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth. And today we're going to go ahead and take a look at all of the healers of the game, which is actually the least amount of characters tagged as a healer in the game, and kind of go ahead and rank them like we did yesterday, looking at my top 5. Plus, we'll do one bonus here. We don't really have a lot of characters to have like yesterday's video, which was multiple bonus characters. So let's go ahead and dive into this. All right, guys. So as you can see, we only have 9 characters in the game that are tagged with the healer, you know, what they are, right? Like they're a healer. You have supports, attackers, which are AKA DPS, your tanks, and your healers, right? So I thought it would be interesting to go through all 4 of these, and it actually sparked a lot of conversation in my video yesterday, and I kind of thought it would, because you know, there's a lot of people who are generally going to have feedback around who they believe are the best and the worst you know, characters in the game. And yesterday we did the tanks, and we had some people who generally agreed with all my positions of these 19 characters, and others that were like, oh man, you left off in Boromir because he's an awesome character, or somebody was challenging me in the comments that Sam is a top character in the game for a tank. And although you aren't necessarily wrong, and technically in the game as it stands today with only 68 total characters, we don't have enough yet in the game to really have a tier, F tier, so substantially power crept between one another, because the game's been out for so long that a character just far and above outweighs another character, because we've gone through 6 iterations of a similar kit that's just been power crept to the point where the character that was released back in whatever, making it up 7 years ago, pretend this game is Swigo and came out 7 years ago, there's probably characters in that game that came out when the game released, and they have a character that's been released every year that has a similar kit in a different faction or whatever it might be, or the same character, but they've made him 3 or 4 times now, that has a similar kit, and it's just been power crept through the roof. So of course, if you had 70 supports or tanks or healers to look at in this game, there's probably going to be 10, 15 wow SA tiers, your run-of-the-mill, they're good enough characters, and then your 5 or 10 like, man, they just suck, they need to be buffed, right? They just need to do something for them. But in games like this, they won't, because they're probably going to be your early release characters, your very easy to get characters. And games like these want you to buy the best characters, and the best characters are generally the newer characters, right? So I thought it was kind of fun going back and forth in the chat yesterday. And again, I don't think any character in any of these buckets are absolute trash. I generally, if they didn't make my top 5 list, it isn't a knock to say that, for example, in this position, Sam is a bad character. I think Sam is a good character, but I don't think he's a top 5 tank in the game. Maybe in specific niche moments, he's very good. Tank versus tank, maybe he wins the battle most of the time, right? But in most modes of the game, in my experience, Road to Rivendell's a pretty easy team to beat in PvP, even if they're built out, right? They're not super hard in comparison to some of the other teams that are out there, whether they're kind of mixed comps or a Rivendell comp, etc. And then in raids, again, they're not really like a top 5 team in the raids. Like, they perform okay, but they're kind of like capped, right? Like, they're easy to get. They're a very good free-to-play farmable team, because they are free-to-play farmable, and then they kind of hit a ceiling, right? So anyways, not to specifically call out anyone here, but that was one that was a little bit back and forth that I thought was interesting. Boromir is another one where I don't have a lot of experience with them, and not a lot of people have Gondor built out, and they're not a fantastic team quite yet in the game, but I do think they're going to be really good in PvP, because they are such a defensive heavy team. I think they're going to be a fantastic defensive comp to have. And I started to actually farm him a little bit, Boromir, and then I'm going to start farming Faramir soon, because he's an easy guild farm, and then I'm going to start putting time actually into Denethor here shortly as a daily node farm. I'm just trying to finish off Waypotato G8, which you can see I'm going to be there probably either today or tomorrow. So once he's done and I don't have to keep farming turquoise and shadow crystals and all the other kind of gear stuff that I've been trying to really prioritize getting my Rivendell and Harajam in a really decent spot, I can then go back to like trying to prioritize shard farming. So anyways, not to kind of completely take the first 5 minutes of this video and going through all that good noise, let's go ahead and take a peek at the healers. and sort of go through that. So let me go ahead and put this back to all. Let's go to healer. So again, we only have 9. So 5 of the 9 is already more than half the healers in the game. So that's really, it's gonna be like a top 3 because I mean, we don't have enough here. When we do DPS in a video over the next few days, it's, you know, there's like 30-ish DPS. So when we do that one, really narrowing that down to the top 5 is gonna be tough, but doing a subset like this with only 9 characters, it isn't really that hard to do, to get most of them really involved. And there's not really, again, terrible characters in the game. So looking at this list immediately, if I was like, damn, if there's one here that just stands out as like never gonna make my top 5, Elrond, in my opinion, is just not a really good character. I feel like his output is not that great, both from his utility and from his healing. It's just not super good. So immediately I'd kind of put Elrond in that, yep, you're not going to make the cut bucket. Another one here, again, just kind of knocking him out before we go into my top 5. Uzan, Mordor is just another squad that no one really is spending a ton of time or investment into. I don't think he's absolutely terrible. He does have an interesting kit with a lot of different utility in there. He does have regeneration. I believe he has some slows. I think he has a weaken. He has heals based off his health and just a standard amount of HP, which is generally pretty good. But again, he's just not really going to make my list either in top 5. So if we're going to go in order, and again, at the end of the video, I will put a screenshot of the like a tier list maker showing my 5 plus the bonus, just so if you want to kind of like reference it at the end on where I kind of place them, you can do that. But as always, I'll have timestamps for each of the characters as I go through them. So going into my first one here, we're going to dive into Naraz. So Naraz, in my opinion, is a very good plug and play character. I think a lot of people actually have him slightly built out, maybe not extremely built out, but to some degree, because he generally fits pretty decent into the raids as sort of like that filler 4th team, 15 comp, where you're just trying to like find your last scraps on your roster that like has a little bit of an investment into and doesn't really build out a team, but he can just plug into a team. He's got a good kit, it really does, right? So he has a summon, which a lot of characters in this game don't have summons. So the goblins have a little bit of that because that's kind of like what they do. But you have Aemir, who has a summon, and then you have him, which his summon's actually a large troll. And his kit is interesting because I kind of like that when you summon the troll, he gets provoke, right? So he kind of becomes like pseudo tank. So he's got like a big health pool, and he becomes a tank for your team, which is kind of cool, right? And you can build him out to sort of focus on being like a provoking passive ability to constantly keep putting pressure onto that large character. So cool. And it allows you to have like a tank and off tank, and then your 6th summon as another tank. So like I could see the Mordor or some sort of mixed Mordor comp being decently good in PvP, because anytime you can like really manipulate the opponent to force attacking what you want them to attack, and in this case constantly provoke attacking your orc or your troll, I should say, into another character or 2 that have also taunt or provoke abilities, it's going to be pretty annoying because you're just going to constantly be forced into fighting something, right? And when this guy dies, it's a long cooldown, but he can resummon him, right? So although you're not going to see him come up too many times in the PvP situation, you know, it is quite a long stamina cooldown, you are going to be able to get him back up. And again, that's PvP specific. Again, in the raids and in PvE, he's got a nice little kit. He applies weakens for 2-turn stack. He's able to do, I believe he can do some cleanse. He can do defensives, right, for your roster. He can do a lot of good stuff. So his kit is interesting, and it's pretty good utility. It's got a summon. I really like Naraz, I do. I'd like to put more investment into him, but I'm kind of waiting until some of my other guys are a little bit more built out. So that would be Naraz at number 5. So number 4 is going to be Tabeb. So Tabeb is a character that a lot of people are probably grinding because Haradrim's a good squad. We kind of talked about this yesterday with Webite. He sort of falls into the same kind of chat. The only difference about him is he's not like Webite, that you can get him pretty easily in one of the store farms. He's in the terrible store farm, the challenge store. So if I was a newer player and I had a free-to-play account or even just a light spender account, I don't know if I'd go for Haradrim because they a very high investment team, and this guy will take an eternity for you to get. I actually just got him to 5-star today because we got that Sunday special, right, where you get everything, and I had just enough where it rolled a 3,000 10 shard. I was at the 10 needed, and of course I had, so it was pretty cool to be able to do that today. So I was pretty excited about getting him to 5-star. I didn't do the Haradrim event when it was up, the marquee. So I am short 100 free shards that I would have gotten had I been able to do that back when Tebeb was originally released. So if they ever do a Haradrim round 2 like they did with Arwen and Elrond, I'd be super stoked. Mentioned this multiple times in videos because it would give me a freebie towards getting Tebeb a little bit further along, because at this point now I'm 500 shards, right? 500 shards, 200 and 300 before I can get him to 7-star, and you average about 15 a week. So yeah, we are very far from really ever getting this guy maxed. So again, if you're a Haradrim fan like myself, you're probably going to farm him, but I would generally stay away from this character. But from a power level, I love this character. I think his passive is awesome as a leader. I love the whole idea of passive sharing. I think it's pretty cool concept. I just really like it. Like, they all have pretty cool, you know, like minute passives in their kits, each of the characters for Haradrim, so Rebel and Yeptu, etc. Nothing is like outstandingly OP or ridiculous or cool individually, but when you are able to stack them all together and then make it so that they all kind of share them, then they become pretty good, because you have this self-healing, this crit increase, etc. Right? So it's kind of cool. Like the Black Serpent Poison's like a big part of their kit, and always being able to inflict that when you get a crit, but you have increased crit chance because you're the passive sharing. It's a really cool concept, and as a healer, Tebeb does really good heals. It's not absolutely insane heals, but you're getting that classic standard amount of heal, right? So in this case, it could be 800 heal, and then it's 20% of this character's max health. So you really stack the health on this character, and you're putting out some pretty decent heals to your teams. And Fortitude as well. Fortitude's great because it's just increased resistance, right? So the kit is good. It has a cleanse, etc. So I think Tebeb is easily a top 5 healer in the game. Going into number 3. So number 3 and 4 was a little bit back and forth on, but Feely is fantastic, right? So Feely Killy, you kind of know them as the duo. There's a lot of like random duos in this game, like Pippin and Merry, and a couple others out there, obviously. But Feely Killy is fantastic together. Feely's got really good tags. It's a dwarf character. It's a Thorin's company character. So obviously with Thorin being released, works really well with Thorin directly, works really well with just like a meshed up dwarf comp that you want Feely Keely as sort of your support healer combo. And then Feely just does some really, really good heals across a lot of Feely's abilities. So it's basic, right? It's doing attacks and then giving out heals to the most wounded character. Then you have Expose and Weaken, which is great. So it's just a nice kind of utility ability in the kit for the team. You have your generic, again, just standard healing with Fortitude and a percent. So kind of like we just saw with Tebeb. So just another one of those sort of like standard healer kind of filler abilities. And then again, it stacks even better if you have it with Keely. So that's kind of why Feely Keely works well together, plus Keely's abilities. And then the passive is it grants a ton of armor and block chance to the team, which again is just great, right? Because the dwarves are generally pretty tanky. And then they kind of work very well synergistically with a lot of the whole kind of stacking different sort of like boons that help them stay alive. They got regeneration, they got armor, etc. So Feely to me is another fantastic character. And what really helps is you can farm Feely directly in the campaign farm. And if you've gotten past Strider at 7 stars, a daily login free 5 shards a day. So very easy to get up quickly if you wanted to really push Feely to max fast. But even if you just want to passively get Feely up there, like I kind of am now on my account, you're just getting 5 shards a day. So anytime you have a decent character and want to kind of consider all variables, getting Feely for free is like getting Strider for free. It's just a really nice, feature, right? In comparison to Tebeb is just like the worst to get up in the game. So that's kind of going to be my number 3. So number 2 is going to be Naramary. So Naramary, you get very early on, guild campaign, just like yesterday's video with the tanks, a couple of them coming from that very early on, chapter 1, chapter 2. I think Naramary, I could be wrong here, but I believe Naramary might have one of the best heal outputs overall in the game. So just strictly speaking, heals from this ability, right? So it does a ton of heal at a static number. And then of course you're getting that percentage based healing for the team based off, again, the healer's max HP. So pretty kind of standard to see this on a lot of the healers where you're getting that static amount of health dished out, which generally has been around 600 or 800 at max, and where Naramary can actually peak at 1,000 However, she can only get up to 18% of this max health, which some of the other characters we've seen get up closer to 20%. So give or take, but I do generally think that she might have one of the best outputs in the game. She offers a nice counter attack plus, you know, cleansing multiple banes, protection, which again, all these just are fantastic ways to keep alive. It has a 2 attack ability, and again, it has a passive, which this is where I think she comes in clutch, especially in PvP, because the character has a pretty decent chance. So when kitted out fully, what is it, 35% chance to gain stealth for a turn. And I've fought against some pretty decked out Naramarys in PvP, and it's frustrating when you're trying to kill the Naramary and she's just stealth, so you can't attack her unless you have like an AoE attack. So with the stealth feature on, annoying, but then obviously when she is under 50% health, it's doubled. So almost always she's going to be hitting stealth. And if she already has stealth, then she gains nimble. So not only is she stealth, but then she gains nimble, which then she can't be hit at all. It's just like, it's super frustrating. She can kind of stay alive for a long time without really trying to force her to stay alive, just passively staying alive. So it's an interesting kit that works, I think, very well in PvP. And I think she will be on some team comps to just kind of be that annoying, can't kill me, I'm going to keep my team alive type of character. Anyways, all right, so coming in at number 1, probably no surprise, as anyone probably saw on my screen here. It's pretty clear, Lord Elrond. It's your legendary character in the healer kind of sub category, so wouldn't be probably surprised to see the legendary being the best healer in the game. And generally, it really is. Like, Lord Elrond's probably the best character in the game, if not the best. It's definitely a top 3 character in the entire game. I would say that it's not an easy farm for Lord Elrond, but at the same time, it's not a hard farm, because Lord Elrond, you don't actually have to do any investment into specifically Elrond himself, but you have to invest into the elves, which isn't bad, because if you're going to build out Rivendell or elves, you're going to do that anyways. And in most guides, or in general, most people are going to build out elves from the get-go. So you really are just under the timeline of when Elrond is back. And speaking of Elrond and coming back, I know we're in a weird kind of situation with the game. Totally get it. But Elrond, based off of his 2 releases in the past and the cadence, I genuinely believe we would see Elrond in March at some point in time. It could be either the beginning, middle, or end. I don't really know. I have it slated for kind of the middle of March in my mind. So for anybody who is out there and wants 7-star Elrond, keep in mind he's probably anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks away from coming into the game as the legendary return event for the 3rd time. So I kind of thought I was in a good spot, not to go on a tangent here, but I thought I was in a really good spot to easily get 7-star Elrond. And my Arwen and Elladan are not even 6-star yet. They're like just about to get there within the next few days. But that means I need 300 shards on Arwen and Elladan to get to 7-star. And if on average you get about 4 shards a day, 4 shards a day into 300 is 75 days. That's like what, 10 weeks? And I'm talking 4 to 6 weeks of time that I have. So unless I want to put money into those characters in order to maybe have some kind of Arwen Elladan sort of special that they usually do it to kind of give you like a little bit of you know, like rollability of factors to try to just spend 1,000 gems or 600 gems or 800 gems and get 10 or 15 shards on one of the 2 characters. Don't really want to do that. So I think I'm gonna have to start refreshing. So if anybody's out there and you're kind of like at that low end 6-star or just approaching 6-star and you're really trying to get your 7-star Elrond, plan accordingly. I'm thinking March. And that only gives us like anywhere from 4 to at most 8 weeks before he could be live. So you don't have a ton of time. So if you need to start a refresh, start thinking about that. But anyways, Lord Elrond, everybody knows Lord Elrond. Everybody knows what he's good at. He offers his big wave, the Wrath of Rivendell, puts a slow on the enemies, manipulates their turn meter, fantastic ability. Vilya's Light, only character in the game that has a res, really is what makes Rivendell so strong. You kill Elladan, Elladan's back. You kill Elladan, Elladan's back. Super annoying. And his Lord of Rivendell passive leadership ability is probably the best leader ability in the game, probably right up there with Thorin's. It's just a great synergy ability with the elves, but also offers just the passive 10% health increase for all light characters. So again, very, very good if you could get him early on in your campaign farming, etc., etc. So Lord Elrond, easily a top pick for your best healer option in the game. And then for last but not least here, we'll do one bonus just because, again, we've already talked about a couple characters that wouldn't make my list. Let's just go ahead and say our good buddy here, Chef Kratska. So the Goblin healer. I like Chef Kratska. He was like borderline, possibly could have made the list over Naraz. A lot of people are going to be building out goblins because goblins is going to be what you need to get Thorin, and a lot of people like to chase the legendaries, so of course you're going to start focusing goblins, like myself focusing goblins, trying to get him to at least that 5-star marker. Shouldn't be an issue given we probably have at least 2 months, if not more, before we see Thorin back, and I'm only about 50 shards away from being able to do that, so not even more than a couple of weeks that I'd have him there. Most of my goblins are already in this bucket or already at 210 plus, but his kit's pretty cool. He has decent sustainability with built-in lifesteal, so that's always kind of nice just to kind of keep himself alive. He has the cool summon factor like some of the goblins have already, where when he dies he summons an assistant cook, which is just another healer that actually does pretty decent healing. So when your healer dies, you have a second healer, which is a nice kind of plus, right? Like, just keeps the ball rolling. This is a very good offensive heavy attacking team, especially when you're working with Great Goblin and his passive leadership ability. And again, he has a decent healing, right? He has the standard, you get max HP, not as heavy as some of the other ones. You're only kind of capping out, I believe, if I'm doing my math here right, at 12%. But he does have a huge amount of heals in general to heal your team at just like that static heal HP number. So cool kit. The whole stealing a boon at max, always stealing a boon is really nice, and it's always prioritizing Great Goblin, so again, just kind of really pumping him up. I like him. I think he's a good character. I think he's easily, you could swap him with Naraz. I think he kind of could be number 5. I don't know if he goes past 5. Tabeb again is one of those weird ones because she's really good, but she's really good if you obviously are building Haradrim. If you aren't focusing Haradrim, you're really not going to invest in Tabeb as just like a plug and play off healer for a team. Like, oh, I'm gonna go for Tabeb because Tabeb's a top 5 healer in the game. You're just not gonna do that, right? But honestly, a lot of these characters you probably aren't just gonna naturally go after as like a healer to just plug and play. I would probably generally say Naraz is a pretty good plug and play character for a lot of different random comps, and Narameri is probably in the same bucket. Elrond, I guess, could be plug and play, but usually you're not really going after Lord Elrond unless you already have a bunch of elves built out, because you need elves built out for Lord Elrond, so you're probably going to have them in an elf-based team. So anyways, that would be my healer top 5, and then just to kind of put it on the screen, I already did it, so no real excitement there to kind of put them on the screen, but I just want to have this, so if anybody wanted to go back and reference it, be able to just say, okay, like, what did he say was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Here is my tier maker specifically for your 9 current in the game healers, and where I put number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that bonus. That bonus obviously being your chef. And then I didn't mention Dunhar. Dunhar he's okay. Of course, you're probably gonna have him because he's an early grind, and you know, he's kind of good with the Isengard team, but he has single target healing, so he's not like a fantastic healer. He does have bleed, which is a nice DPS buff, but he just doesn't have the heals. Like, your healer is kind of Ugluck with his passive. So anyways, not going to go on to each of the characters. We kind of went over the ones that I would consider your best healers in the game. So anyways, let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments. I kind of like having the back and forth on where you guys think that you would slate somebody differently. And again, I will try to continue the series with going into the supports and the DPS in the next couple of days to kind of round out the 4 different buckets of where they're sort of placed in the game in their roles. So if you like the video, don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on our road to 1,000 subscribers, so very exciting. We're growing very rapidly. Let's hope the game has a light at the end of the tunnel, and we'll continue making content. See you in the next one. Bye.